All right, thank you, Margot, and everyone who took the time to come on today. I want to thank the Wisconsin Justice Initiative for putting this on. I think it's a great opportunity to speak to everyone about this campaign and what my ambitions and views are. Um, so I do want to put one disclaimer out. I do work from home. I have 3 dogs. I have done my best to put them away so that you don't hear them. So I do apologize if you hear any ruckus. So I want to also compliment you on thinking of putting this forum together and doing it via Zoom, because you had the forethought to think about COVID and the number and the fact that we really don't know where we are with it. In light of when we're talking about COVID and what the impact of the pandemic, I think the court system um, has struggled just as much as every other industry. And we've seen that firsthand. Those of us that worked during, that 18-month period of trying to keep things operating daily, to work out different process to get the job done. And so I want to first compliment all of the staff who were there through the thick of it, doing everything they could to keep our office moving. So we're in an unprecedented time in that we have not had an opportunity here in Milwaukee County to vote for a clerk of circuit court since, I believe it's 1998. So the retirement of John sort of pushed me forward and into a political realm, which is not something I'm particularly comfortable with and definitely not accustomed to. But I'm committed to public service. I'm committed to what we do and to the work of this office. I've spent 30 years in public service, starting first in the county executive's office, and my last position there was actually handling constituent relations for the office. So I spent every day talking to people in the community that had issues or had concerns, and helping them navigate through sort of the red tape of our judicial system, not just the judicial system, but county government in general. So I know firsthand what it feels like to try to maneuver and try to get something done, and what it's like when you know that some of our processes don't really align with some of our needs. So after that, I did spend a few years, 2 years in the governor's office, doing much of the same type of work in his Milwaukee office, um, dealing with the public in the community every day, talking about initiatives, and just kind of building those relationships in the community. So that's a time that I'm very, very proud of. In 2000, I came back to Milwaukee County and worked under the chief judge. I was hired back originally under Chief Judge Skorowski. And in that capacity, I worked on, there were 2 of us that worked on pro se issues and interpreter issues. We came back it was a grant funded position. And the focus was to provide access, to ensure that access was there for individuals that needed to come into the court system. So putting together our interpreter program is something that I'm very, very proud of. I worked alongside Ernesto Romero in that capacity, and that's something I think we both are very, very proud of. We also had an opportunity to be there before the MJC existed in G9. When we just worked at a counter, to look at what we could do with our constraints to ensure that when individuals came into the courtroom, they had an opportunity to have their day in court. So we were there to offer forms assistance. Civil division for 12 years. I had a staff of approximately 92 people at that point, responsible for the day-to-day operations there. It's a large division. And was also the first division to voluntarily move to the e-filing system. And with that was the person that was responsible for developing the different procedures so that we could e-file and e-file effectively. Because as everyone knows, the e-filing system is not designed for our county in particular. It is designed for all of the county, which means our size and the way we process cases is very, very different from the other counties. So it was very necessary, honestly, with the filing of the very first case, to work out how we would actually be able to effectively do our job. Um, Beyond After that, in 2018, I became the chief deputy under John Barrett, and was then responsible for generally for the oversight for all four of the divisions, um, which was it was a very it was I didn't have a lot of time to just kind of get comfortable with that, because then entered COVID, and the shutting down of the courts themselves, but us needing to maintain and to continue to serve the public. So I was the person there on site each day. I was, involved daily in working with the judges to develop um, our process, so that we could get work to them and from them, and working out how they could best do their jobs during that time as well. We initially looked at our hours just for counter hours, and we did reduce them initially just because we weren't really sure what we were dealing with. But our office never closed. Again, because we're talking about electronic filing, it's important that we're there to serve the public every day, no matter what. And that's something that we did, and I'm quite proud of. I'm also quite proud of our staff and their willingness to step up and do what needed to happen during that time. It was tough, is what it was. There were weeks, if not months, where our staff were probably the only people that you would see in the courthouse. But they stepped up, and they did their best, and they worked very hard for the citizens of this county to continue to get the job done. So if nothing else, I want to be certain that I acknowledge them. When we talk about this race and any differences between myself and my opponent, ultimately, I've worked in the system for quite some time, since 2000. I've gained quite a bit of knowledge that I think can be very helpful in terms of moving us forward. It's quite funny, because one thing that Mr. Barrett said when he retired was, now, now that he's out of the way, I'm sort of free to kind of do the new things, and to look at how we would best move forward. So I'm interested in looking at what we can do to fine tune what we do electronically, what we can do to better support our staff, to better support our staff, to better train our staff, and to better serve the public. So ultimately, that's my focus. I think that's what I'm interested in doing. And I think that the experience that I bring can be quite helpful, and can be quite helpful in recommending those changes. When you understand how we work and what we do internally, I think that you're in the best position to make those changes on the other side, to move us forward.
George, go ahead.
All right. Hi. Thank you, Margot, and thank you, WJI, for having me and for hosting this forum. I'm George Christensen. I'm the Milwaukee County Clerk. I'm also the Milwaukee County Clerk of Circuit Court at the moment. I'm holding both positions, only taking one paycheck, of course. I started out in public service myself about 28 years ago. My first position right out of college was Executive Director of the 30th Street Industrial Corridor Corporation. From there, I moved over to the Riverworks Development Corporation. Our function there was to revitalize some of Milwaukee's poorest census tracts through job creation and placement, training and placement. And I really love that job and those times. So my life as well has been dedicated to public service. After that, I was drafted by the Doyle administration, and I served as a deputy executive director of WJI, the State Housing Authority. And from there, I moved on to Habitat for Humanity in Waukesha County for a while, and then landed in the Milwaukee County Clerk's office as the deputy director under Joe Zarneski. I performed those duties for about 7 years. And when Joe retired, I ran for that position, and I was elected in 2016 and reelected in 2020 as Milwaukee County Clerk. When Mr. Barrett retired early, by state statute, the judiciary was charged with filling that position by appointing a clerk of circuit court to fill out the balance of Mr. Barrett's term. A majority of the judges selected me for that position because they felt there needed to be a fresh start. I've been doing that role since the end of February and have instituted numerous policies and initiatives in order to improve the organization. And if elected, I hope to continue doing that. When I first started off in the office on day one, I was confronted with the fact that there were 67 vacancies out of 300 employees. And there seemed to be no hurry to hire these individuals. And so we immediately kicked it into high gear and began to post for these positions in order to find people to help do the functions of the Clerk of Circuit Court's office. In addition to that, I also worked closely with staff and with my HR people in order to really learn from the staff what was going on. I hosted a number of stop, start, and continue listening sessions, which were very revealing in terms of the work environment and how the staff felt. And so we immediately took that to heart and began to institute some things that in order to stop the bleeding, to retain employees and to make sure we put our best foot forward with respect to attracting new employees. Just recently, I'm very pleased to announce that I was able to secure an increase in pay for all of our deputy court clerks who we were losing. And so that made a tremendous difference in terms of being able to support the courts. I'm currently working right now with Human Resources on an equity plan in order to make sure that our other senior clerical staff also are paid what they're worth in the marketplace, because unfortunately, the pay rates were stagnant for a very long time. And so we're working on that. In addition, I've worked with internal audit and I've asked for an audit in order to see if there's any issues that I need to address. There were a number of fiscal concerns I had when I entered, and we're working to address those as well. I'm running for this office, quite frankly, because I was asked. I love my job. I love county service. I love being a county clerk. But as a public servant, when you are called to action, you need to act. And when numerous stakeholders, judges, department heads, community representatives, and other users of the court system reached out to me and asked me to please consider taking my administrative skills and experience over to the courts in order to help fix those issues and those challenges, I took up the call to action and said, I'll do it. And I really enjoyed it. And we're making a lot of headway. And I really hope if I'm given the honor by the electorate to serve, that I can continue to institute a positive change and move forward going forward. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
All right. First, just a quickie, and then I'd like to follow up with a real one. This one's for Anna. Which county exec and which governor did you work for?
County executive was Tom Ament. County and governor was Tommy Thompson.
Okay, thank you. And George, you mentioned that the judges felt a change was needed, but I'd like you both to respond, and George, if you want more fully, to respond why you think George was chosen while Anna was not, with your experience, Anna.
Well, I think historically, and based on what I've witnessed and been told by a majority of the judges, was that the previous administration did not work collaboratively with the judiciary. In fact, it was a very adversarial approach. The best example I can give you is Mr. Barrett and his senior staff refused to share the budget with the judges. And so I found that quite odd, because they're our internal customers. We exist to support the functions of the courts. So this year, as we worked on the budget, I, of course, included the chief judge, her senior staff, and we collaborated to make sure that their needs are met and their voices were heard in the system that, of course, they're extremely involved in. And I'm really proud to say that that worked out really well. And at first, there was some trust building there because, from previous experience, they were at first happy that we were just at the table. And then after a course of several weeks, we worked together. We improved the narratives within the budget. We addressed some issues that the judiciary had itself. And I'm really proud to say that we put forth a budget that actually meets the tax target levy from last year, which I really think no one thought we could do, given the challenges we face. So I think that's really one good example of why the judges selected me over Ms. Hodges during that process.
Anna?
I'm sorry, and you'd like me to answer the same question?
Yes, please.
So it's rather difficult for me to say why they selected Mr. Christensen versus myself. However, I too have very good relationships with a large number of the judiciary. I can't sit here and speak for Mr. Barrett. I think that it's just not possible for me to do so. If budget is an issue, I was not the person that would necessarily make those decisions. However, I can say that at every budget hearing, you had the clerk of court, and you had the chief judge present representing or presenting the budget every year. I do know that there were, and I was involved in conversations with the chief judge for initiatives that they had or they'd like to see put forward. If it were things as small as raises that they wanted for their staff, that when approached, those were issues that they worked with Mr. Barrett directly on. So I don't believe that their relationship was an adversarial one in its entirety. I do know that Mr. Barrett, and again, I'm now speaking for him, which is not really my job to do, but I think I can say, I know that Mr. Barrett ran his office in what he considered to be the most fiscally responsible manner. And I do know that there was in fact collaboration between them. If I speak for myself and my interactions with the judiciary, I have worked with, particularly, let's just use the pandemic. I worked with the judges daily through the chief judge and some of the judges and presiding judges directly on the issues that they had and the concerns that they had in trying to make certain that they were able to get their job done. So what I think, in to some degree, some of the things you hear are when you talk about the appointment itself it's one of more about who I didn't have those friendships with some of the same judges. So, and I'm not a politician. So we come from very different backgrounds. For me, it is I have always operated within this system to identify issues, fix those issues, or when an issue is presented to me, I'm the person that needs to work out a process to move us forward. So I've been the active, sort of manager in that perspective. I cannot speak to why, given my experience, I just can't, beyond the fact that I'm not, clearly not a politician in this and don't have those same friendships.
I'm sorry, are you working for the clerk of court now?
No, I'm actually retired. I retired April 1st, so I could continue. I had already, when Mr. Barrett retired in January, I put in my papers to run. I was told that was problematic because I was going to be running, so that the potential for an appointment was perhaps not possible. Nonetheless, I had already committed to it and retired, or my last day work was actually March 1st. That was my last day.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Susan Lund, you had a question in the chat, so go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Sure. I just wondered about the number of vacancies that are currently in the clerk of court's office. George mentioned that there were 67 when he stepped into the role, and I wondered how many there were currently.
Sure, I can answer that. We filled, I would say, about 70% already, and of the original vacant positions. Of course, we've had some internal vacancies as a result of the retirement of some of key staff and Ms. Hodges after she wasn't appointed. But as far as promotions, we've worked very hard to make sure we give everybody a clean slate and a fair shake at getting promoted. And so I've promoted several people internally, which then of course creates some frictional vacancies in their positions. So it's been quite positive in terms of filling those vacancies. And within, I would say 30 days, we filled all of the deputy court clerk positions initially. And so we're in the process now, of course, expanding the courts, and we need to hire for a few more, which is a good thing.
Diane, go ahead and unmute.
I believe I am. I actually have two questions. I am a divorce lawyer, and I think it is unique to civil filings in our electronic filing program that divorce cases live on without a foreseeable, by the court system anyway, death date. And so I have recently experienced a host of difficulty with conversion of an old divorce case to electronic filing that seemed to be caused by no staff, no notice from anyone. When I would email for a conversion per known procedure, I didn't get told that that person wasn't in place. And then there are a number of confusing processes around that after the file is converted about the former judge needing to let in the documents. And so I just, that's my first question, really generally asking to what's causing that? Is there a way to make a better system and give that better attendance? It affects people's civil legal rights because there are backdating laws about when support can be modified. If you can't convert a file and you can't file, the people lose rights to a retroactive judgment. So number one, what can happen to improve that conversion rate? That's my first question. And help with the practitioners. So.
George or Anna, who wants to go first on that one?
I believe that's probably for George.
Sure, I'm happy to respond. So when I took over, there were no manuals or policy or procedures in place that I could find, unfortunately. And so what we ended up doing is we began to work internally with the administration Office of Management Strategy and Budget to undertake some process mapping to really try to make heads or tails of the process, because I think Ms. Deal is correct. It's not very efficient, and there are phone numbers that you call that just ring forever. Even as the county clerk, I experienced that, and when I, tried to communicate that to Mr. Barrett, it didn't really go anywhere. So we're trying to fix that. We're trying to get humans to answer the phones now instead of having this hodgepodge phone tree. And so the process is critical, of course, as you mentioned, Ms. Deal. So I think what we really need to do is we need to reimagine civil 100%, and that's what we're doing. We're taking a look at that. In addition, from a human resources perspective, the individual that was running the civil division, well, there was no civil division administrator because it wasn't filled when Ms. Hodges moved up to acting clerk of court. And so there was no civil division administrator when I took over. And so one of the deputies actually had the knowledge base, and there was no cross training whatsoever. And so when she left, we didn't have any backup. And so I'm working closely with, again, with office manager and management strategy and budget to really put together an organizational plan to make sure that these issues are addressed under my watch.
Okay. Should I respond now?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Deal. So there are a few things there that are what's creating the issue. The conversion, there was a process, has been one since we went electronic back in 2017. So as soon as they're notified of your request for conversion, they're to convert the case, look at the succession and be certain that the current judge is tabbed to the case, and then notify you. What it sounds like is that has not occurred. So that process has been there longstanding. But I will say, what you are probably experiencing, honestly, is the lack of knowledge from the staff that's there. And with the recent loss of the managers in that area, that may also be adding to the issues. There was, in fact, an administrator put in place after I moved on to be chief deputy. She retired towards the end of the pandemic due to some other issues. So she retired, and the assistants worked jointly, learning together, learning the civil division that way. So they were both mentoring, and I was trying to teach them as much as I could as well. So there was one in place, but that person retired during the pandemic. So it sounds like it's a breakdown of the process that has worked for many years. Up until this point. So if you're requesting a conversion, you should be notified once it's converted. And when it's converted, staff is also supposed to be certain that the succeeding judge is also retabbed to the case so that you won't have those issues with the old judge. I know exactly what you're talking about. The documents coming in, they're tabbed to the judge, the previous judge on the case. That judge is rotated and it's not moved. That's because that's been missed.
Right. Well, thank you for that, both of you. I will tell you that since we went all electronic, I have converted numerous cases without ever getting a notification that they were converted. So that part of the process has not ever been followed. I have to go in and check and see if the case is ready for me to file documents. But I have another question, and I think it's really to both of you, which is, would you be open to changing one particular family court procedure that is truly an annoying hassle? Okay, and this annoying hassle is there's a $5 fee for entering a judgment of divorce in Milwaukee County. It is evidently not waivable. It's not, in other words, you can't get a poverty waiver. I forget what they call that momentarily. You can't get a waiver of that fee because you don't have means, even if your other filing fees. This must accompany a judgment. I have spent probably for every $5 fee that I've had to pay, I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars of legal time writing a check, calling your office, getting somebody on the phone to take the payment, having that information transmitted to the court, having the court not know that the $5 is paid. What can we do about that? Honestly, I'd rather pay $10 when I file than have to worry about that $5 judgment fee. So is there something we can do proactively that would save time in the clerk's office? I think really in a big way. What could we do?
Did you want me to answer?
I
Or
think
George,
it's-
whoever.
it's-
Either one.
Yeah,
Okay.
Is there a way that we can propose to change that? Campaign promise. I'm asking for a campaign promise, I guess.
So again, remember I said I'm not a politician, but I will say that actually is not a discretionary fee. That's a statutory fee. It's a judgment fee. So that's why it's not waivable. We'd be talking about changing the statute. So it's that is what I would say in a nutshell. A lot of the other things you do, the waiver covers, but that fee, I do not believe is covered under the waiver.
Why couldn't you collect it up front?
So initially, there's two things that used to happen or happened frequently. I personally had no problem and would tell them to go ahead and take the fee up front. There are some that felt they didn't want the money coming in because they didn't know for certain they would grant the judgment. So they didn't want it paid until it was actually granted. I personally don't have a problem with it. I think what I had trained people to do is to check before when they get ready to enter a judgment, look at your fees and see that the $5 has already been paid and just process the judgment. So again, it's about process, it's about training. That's one thing I would have the judgment clerks look for routinely. In fact, I did a lot of divorce judgments before I left. Is looking to see whenever I take my stack of judgments or when I get the emails to see who's actually paid the fees and just go ahead and process. We had one judgment clerk that would just send out what we used to call the bad letter routinely, just send them out. And then, you know, I'd have someone call me and I'd look and I'm like, the fee is here. So it's training. And I don't ever want to just like kind of jump on staff and say, oh, they're doing this wrong, but because they're dealing with a lot every day. But we do want to build a system that doesn't cause you the same amount of stress. So I'll say that's training, and that's about making certain. I don't have a problem with you paying the fee. I think the fee should be paid because we can't enter the judgment until we receive it. So the fee should be paid up front, and we should simply be checking to see if the fee is paid. When that's happening with you, I bet it's happened to you several times that you've gotten that bad letter and then had to call or try to call to say, I already paid it.
There's no option for me to do that with electronic filing, by the way.
Yeah, they usually call the cashiers. I understand.
And that's a lot of time for me and them with the endless ringing phone.
Well, I've actually, since I took over, I've heard this numerous times, and I don't understand why we would put clients, many clients who are maybe do not have the funds, in a situation where an attorney has to write a $5 check and then bill their client back for that time. That just puts people further in the hole. What I've done is I've already had some conversations, quite honestly, with outside stakeholders, including attorneys, about this, and we're already looking into this. I think putting on the front end is fine. Ms. Hodges talked about training, and I agree. That was the number one issue during my stop, start, and continue listening sessions with the staff immediately upon taking office. That training, people were not trained properly. They were trained for about a week and just thrown in front of the windows. And it showed with customer service. And so that's another thing that we're working on now, is instituting a organizational wide training program because that was one of the biggest complaints that we heard. So I feel we can deal with this $5 fee issue, and I'm already working on it.
Right. And just one more follow-up to that, to Ms. Hodges' point that it's statutory and not waivable. To the best of my knowledge, neither Waukesha County nor Ozaukee County charge it at all. Filing fees are the same. So just saying.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree. I've actually made some calls to that, and I believe we're the only county that's doing it. So again, there needs to be equity across the state with that. I realize we're the largest county, but users have to feel that it's equitable. And so that's another issue we're looking at.
All right, I have a question in the chat from someone who's on a phone, so would rather me just ask it, and then we'll go to Christy after this one. So this is from Krista LaFave, and she says, the way it is set up now is that each judge's clerk takes in edited documents. If the clerk is out, then the documents sit there, potentially causing delay for notice to the other party. Is there any thought to have a central system for accepting e-filings, such as how it used to be when a person filed a paper copy in the clerk's office? So George, why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah. So yeah, we are actually in the process of doing that with respect to process mapping. We're looking at everything. And the goal that I have is to have the least amount of touches on a document and a case from my office. The idea is if we're more efficient, our staff will be less taxed. Our users, our customers will be better served. And so we are looking at everything, and that's part of the process mapping system that we're working on now. And I hope to be able to make some of these changes by second quarter of next year.
Anna, any thoughts on that? Oh, you're muted.
So that's an interesting concept. You're talking about a redesign within CCAP or the assigning of multiple individuals to multiple COs. So, or court officials. So it's interesting. There's some fine tuning that can always happen. However, were I to be a filer, I'd be a bit concerned about where my documents go. And because again, if that deputy court clerk does not process that document, let's say it's a motion, if that clerk doesn't process it and manage their cases, things can get lost. That's one of the things that happens with electronics. If I don't see it, I don't know it happened. So there's some interesting things we could probably do to make things more efficient. Be it, you have pair judges, maybe you have pair clerks. But I'd be really concerned, I personally would be concerned if you're talking about, say, the civil division where you've got 11 judges, that any one of the 11 could take in your documents and the judge and potentially forget to process something correctly. A lot of it has to do with the security level that they have and who they have access to. So if we start giving every deputy court clerk access to every judge, you can imagine it's, it could be a bit chaotic, but I think there's always room for improvement here. And that's one thing I can say that I was really happy about, is that I had the ability to work with CCAP a lot on how we did things. And they would actually call and say, if we did this, how would this look on your end? So I think that there's always opportunity to work with them to fine tune and come up with something that works better, because I can definitely understand that can be frustrating. I've dealt with many attorney who is looking for something to be processed where, we have to go through and find it based on the volume that we receive every day. But it's an interesting concept. I think something that I would be committed to working on.
All right, Christy, go ahead, unmute and ask your question.
Thanks. Thanks. Hi, everybody. I don't have a horse in this race. I can't vote in Milwaukee County, and I really didn't know anything about this race, so I was eager to listen. And it looks like we have two great candidates. So I want to thank both of you for being willing to run, which is terrifically hard nowadays, and for your long, long service. The other reason I wanted to come, frankly, was to thank Anna. In our office, between e-filing and CCAP issues, I would say, well, since 2017-18, whenever we needed an answer or a fix, Anna got right back to us. And I've never met her. I've never had a chance to thank her. My staff, and then it turned out the rest of the staff in our large office knew, if you've got a problem, call Anna. Her ability to get back personally and solve things was remarkable. And we found that across the board. It sounds, George, like you have the same approach. So I just don't know you, but I came to thank Anna, and because my staff wanted to thank her. So that's it. And now I got to run. Have a great week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions?
I have one, Margot.
Okay, go ahead.
Maybe two. George, you said you have taken one paycheck. Will you continue to do that, or will you accept both paychecks?
Oh, no, no, I won't accept both paychecks at all. So if I'm elected, my plan then would be to resign from my county clerk position after the election. And then by statute, the county board would appoint a replacement or call a special election.
And just to get both of you on the record on this one, as you know, the state Supreme Court recently gutted the public records law. I'd just like to hear what you each think is a reasonable time to respond to a public records request, and what your commitment to doing so is.
Anna, why don't you go first on this one?
I was just reading on that. I mean, honestly, I think my focus was always 10 days. So I mean, I think it needs to be as soon as possible, honestly. We dealt with many open records requests. There would be weeks at a time where I just received multiple. I think my focus stayed at 10, and I understand it's been gutted, but I think we still need to stay with as soon as possible. I don't think we need to be pushing that off. Because the public trust depends on this transparency, and I think we need to go above and beyond to make certain that we continue to fulfill that need.
I agree. I mean, it's as soon as practicable without delay by law. And as the county clerk, we receive open records requests, of course, all the time, especially as you can imagine as a chief election official for the county, and the political environment we are currently in, we receive them all the time. And so I believe that it's our duty as public servants to respond immediately, as soon as possible. My goal, of course, is to, as Anna said, I believe 10 days is reasonable. I believe immediately is reasonable if you have the information and if you have the staffing that can do it. And so I think that's a reasonable approach. Right now, what I'm trying to do within this office, because I've only been in this office since the end of February, is trying to put together some policies internally. It's very decentralized in this organization. You have civil doing its thing, you have criminal doing its thing, probate's doing its thing. So we're trying to change that to more of a centralized process for these types of issues. And I think this is one of those type of issues that we need to focus on as well.
Looks like Craig Johnson, maybe?
Sure, I'll ask the question. So I do mostly criminal defense, and I used to spend about a little shy of a decade and a half with the public defender's office. One of the things that comes up with regard to the court system generally is the issue of procedural justice and the way our clients, my clients, criminal defense clients, public defender clients are treated by court staff. When they're trying to sort of just navigate the difficult and stressful process of going through a prosecution as a defendant, or frankly as a witness or whoever. So I wonder if you both could just sort of comment on kind of ensuring sort of an ethos of service, public service among the staff, and how to kind of really reinforce that culture of procedural justice for people who are navigating the system, attorneys as well, but particularly people who are members of the public who are going through either, pro se divorce, whatever, civil, small claims, obviously in the criminal court system as well. Thank you.
George, why don't you go first on this one?
Sure, I'm happy to. Yeah, that was again during my listening sessions with outside stakeholders. Another big issue. Customer service and public service go hand in hand. It's paramount. My county clerk's office has developed a strong reputation for treating people with empathy and respect and dignity. That is what I plan to install at the Clerk of Circuit Court's office. We've made some progress in that already. And as we get fully ramped up, I will make sure that we have mandatory customer service training for everyone, because I think it's sorely needed.
Sorry. So I'll agree on that point. I mean, I think procedural justice is fundamental to in my worldview. I've spent much of my time dealing one-on-one, trying to assist people, help them navigate through the system. So for me, it's paramount. It's what I've always tried to do, and it's something that I have always tried to instill in staff. I agree. Customer service training, stronger training is really important. It's important that we recognize that we, in some instances, are dealing with people, in most instances, are dealing with them at the lowest time and the most stressful time of their life. And we need to be there, and do our jobs and do it in a manner that is professional and is appropriate. customer service, the focus on customer service is something that I'm very, very, very much interested in, and we will make some immediate changes on that front. But again, you're talking to a person who spent so much of their time either in the jail or at front counters. So I completely understand your question and the perspective that you have as a criminal defense attorney.
Since,
All right, any other questions?
yeah, since there's a couple of minutes left, I thought I would just ask about a debt collection policy that the court started using again in June. I work with people who've lost their driver's licenses due to poverty. Milwaukee County Circuit Court stopped using driver's license suspensions to collect debt in 2020, and I believe restarted in June. Studies by the Director of State Courts have shown that it is ineffective for collecting debt and also harmful to people experiencing poverty and people of color. I was wondering if there's been any internal discussion about why the court is continuing to use driver's license suspensions to collect debt after having stopped in 2020.
Yeah, actually, I can speak to that. This was, it wasn't something that started in June on purpose, quite frankly. This is, again, this decentralized system when I hired a new division administrator for civil and the two deputies quit. This individual was unfortunately in the process of trying to figure it out. And this was brought to my attention. Actually, last night I was in a listening session with the MBA, and this came up, and it wasn't something I was aware of. And I agree 100%. So that's not going to continue. And so I'm already working on it. Thanks.
So I have a question. I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify. So you said in June. And again, I'm not there, so I'm Ms. Lunda. I'm learning something from you. You said in June, but you're talking about traffic citations, are you not? Or are you saying money judgments and civil driver's licenses are being suspended?
Well, sometimes with damage judgment suspensions, driver's licenses are suspended, but I was speaking specifically of unpaid traffic ticket citation debt.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clarify, and I because you do have the negligent operation that where a civil judgment coming out of there. But other than that, I hadn't heard anything happening on the civil side. So I was just curious. Thank you. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
That's something I would definitely want to look at. I don't think in general as a practice, that's something that should that should happen. I think that's a conversation. I think at this point, it's probably having a conversation with the judiciary in terms of the tools that they're choosing to use, and probably doing some follow up on that front is really important.
So I want to thank everyone for attending, and wish you all good luck in getting your afternoon work done, and hopefully see you in a couple of weeks for the sheriff's one. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.